So can you feel it? Spring is in the air. We're starting to hear the birds chirp. We know spring is coming. We know winter is wrapping up, and you are in the right place when you are looking to understand just exactly what does it look like for the spring housing market in Louisville, Kentucky as we wrap up February and we head into March. I'm Emily Price with Keller Williams Collective, and I'm here today to bring to you all of the important market stats and market trends you need to know if you're curious at all about the housing market. So follow along with me. I'm going to walk you through the top 5 things that you need to know about our market as we go into the spring. First up in our monthly market update for Louisville, Kentucky, coming to you from Emily Price with Keller Williams Collective at the Price Group. The first thing that we're going to touch on that we bring the insights to you on every month is we are first going to look at inventory. So we're constantly measuring the number of homes that are available for purchase. That's what inventory means. So if we go out into the market today, how many for sale signs are there? How many opportunities are there for buyers to look at when purchasing their new home? Inventory also lets us know just exactly how much competition the sellers have. So as we're looking at today, wrapping up February and going into March, today in the Greater Louisville housing market, we have just a little over 3,000 homes for sale. In fact, we're sitting at 3,026. Now, if you rewound that about 4 weeks ago, just a month earlier, we were actually a little bit higher at 3,137. Now, when we started 2026, which wasn't that long ago, we were kind of still in the general same space. We were at 3,085 homes for sale. Now, what's curious is that this time last year, so comparing going into March of 2026 with going into March of 2025, this time last year, we were almost at 1,000 less homes. We were at 2,280 homes for sale on the market in terms of an inventory count. So what is that telling us? It tells us that the competition is up slightly for sellers as we head into the spring market of 2026. And for buyers, great news, there's more choices, more inventory on the market for you to choose from. In fact, in comparison from this time right now to this time last year, we have a 32.7% increase in the amount of total available inventory for sale in the Greater Louisville housing market. Okay, so I promised you that we would take a look at 5 key metrics that you need to pay attention to when looking at any housing market, especially going into the spring housing market. And here we are on point number 2. The second point I want to bring to you today is that of purchase price. And not just purchase price, let's be more clear. We're talking about the average sold price of homes in Greater Louisville. So here we are wrapping up February and going into March of 2026. Where is the average of all of Greater Louisville, of the whole Greater Louisville area, which of course is a large area? We're going to look at the average sold price. So this is the number that the home actually closed for. Buyer and seller agreed. It went through the whole process of inspections and appraisal and so forth, and got to the closing table and successfully sold. So what's that average price looking at here today as we wrap up February of 2026? Today we're sitting at right at $300,000 as an average sales price. In fact, to be as specific, we're at $301,658. Now, where does that compare with just about 4 weeks ago? Well, 4 weeks ago, as we were headed into February, we were just a little bit higher at right underneath $312,000. Now, when we compare that to where we started the year, the average sold price of where we started the year was right under $330,000, $329,454 to be exact. Now we're going to pause here for a second, and I want to give you a key piece of clarity when it comes to looking at sold prices. They are a lagging indicator. So what that means is when we're looking at the average sold price today, that's actually reflective of what buyers and sellers negotiated perhaps 30 days ago, 45 days ago, 60 days ago. It takes between 30 to 60 days for a home to go from contract accepted to closed. So any time that we are talking about sold price, we are thinking about what was successfully negotiated 30, 45, 60 days ago. So keep that in mind. So we're talking about the price points that were negotiated as we were coming right in the middle of the holidays as we were turning into that new year. So again, where were we at the top of 2026? We were right under 330,000. Now, right now, we're just an edge over 300. We're at 301. Where were we this time last year? Well, this time last year, we were at $358,092. So $358 this time last year, $301 this time. That's a little bit of a difference. Now, we would expect to see that as inventory goes up, and that's exactly what happens. So the general rule of supply and demand is as that inventory goes up, sellers have a little more competition, buyers have a little more choice. Oftentimes we will see a correlating trend of average sales price coming down just a bit. That's what we are seeing right here. In fact, on average, home prices this week are 15.8% lower than this time last year. So we always take note of 5 trending behaviors in the market, 5 statistics that we want to look at for each month for the monthly market update here with the price group. And so we are on metric number 3. So let's talk about the third thing that we always measure, and that is days on market, okay? So days on market means just that. How many days does a property stay on market until it goes under contract with the new buyer? So we're talking about the time between for sale to the time of contract accepted, not the time of it going to closing. We're just talking about how long does it take to find the buyer and for the seller to get an accepted offer. So today in the Greater Louisville area, it's taking just slightly longer than 2 months. We're at an average of 62 days on market. So on average, if you were thinking about selling your home right now in the Greater Louisville area, it's going to take on average just a little over 2 months to find your buyer. And then from there, remember, then we have the time period of 30 or 45 or 60 days that it will take you from that point to get to the closing table. Now, where were we just 4 weeks ago? We were just slightly faster at 55 days on market, and at the start of the year, just slightly faster of that at 52 days on market. So our days on market are getting slightly larger as 2026 is progressing. Now that is probably because the inventory is also increasing. So again, slightly more competition for the seller, more choices for the buyer is going to usually have a corresponding trend line of more days on market. Now, how does that stand with this time last year though? Because the thing that we have to also kind of put an asterisk around when we're talking about market behaviors in February of any year is that we have to give some consideration for the weather, the seasonality of the weather. And especially here in 2026, we have had quite the winter, I think we would all agree. And when we have quite the winter, it will slow down buyer traffic sometimes. And so therefore days on market might be showing a touch higher due to seasonality and due to weather. And then again, also potentially due to inventory, but we have to put an asterisk around the seasonality of it and how it influences it. Now, this time last year, actually, even though this time last year the inventory was different and the average sales price was different, what we're finding is that days on market were almost exactly the same. So this time last year, it was taking 63 days from a home to go from for sale to contract accepted. And again, today, between 2025 and 2026, it's just 1 day off at 62 days. So that would lead us to think that it's probably more a result of the seasonality of the winter weather than anything else. So be sure to follow along with us because I bring those monthly market updates to you every month, and we'll see just how that seasonality and the inventory does or does not affect the days on market next month. Here at the Price Group, we absolutely love to keep our eyes on all of the market behaviors, all the trend lines that help our clients, our buyers and sellers in Greater Louisville, know how to plan, predict, and strategize to get exactly what they want and when they want it. Also, when studying market trend behavior, it's helpful for anyone who owns a property, as for most of us, our property is our greatest asset. So always helpful to know how the market is behaving so you know how it impacts your asset. I promised you that we'd walk you through 5 metrics today, and here we are at point number 4. Point number 4 is one of my favorite metrics of looking at market behavior because it ties it all kind of in a bow, and that is the absorption rate. So the absorption rate is the measurement basically between supply and demand. And supply is the inventory, which is representative of sellers, and demand are the buyers. So we measure supply and demand. Now, what exactly does an absorption rate look like? An absorption rate takes this type of thought. It says, what if the market was to kind of freeze, as in no new property came to market. Now that never ever happens. So this is just the definition of the measurement that I'm giving you. So in theory, if we played pretend and no new properties were to come on the market, well, then what we're looking at is with the current pace of buyer traffic, how long would it take for all those properties to sell? So with the current rate of supply, which is the inventory, when we run the buyer interest, the current level of buyer interest, which is demand, through that supply, how long would it take for all those properties to sell? That's the absorption rate. And what we know is that academically, we often in the real estate industry consider anything 5 months or less to be technically a seller's market. Things that are a little north of 5 months, kind of sitting in that 6 month spot, 6 to 7 month spot, is it a balanced market? And those never last long. And then 7 months north is what we would traditionally call a buyer's market. Now, before we go into the details of that, it's really important, this is a great big asterisk for everyone, to understand that a 1 month absorption rate seller market is going to feel and behave and have much different strategies than, say, a 3 month seller absorption market. So we want to take that into consideration as we're reviewing this information. So drum roll, I've got the absorption rate for you, which I know is what you're waiting for, right? So here we are today, we're wrapping up February of 2026 and we're going into March of 2026, and we are sitting at 3.88 months of inventory in our market. So we have almost a 4 month absorption rate in Louisville. Now that is one of the higher absorption rates that we've seen in quite some time, and yet still within the definition of a seller's market. Now, how does that compare? Which we always want to know where we're going with market trend lines, right? We want to know, as a buyer or a seller, is the market moving towards us? Is it moving away from us? And again, that influences our strategy. It influences how we at the Price Group are going to guide our clients to help you, again, get what you want and when you want it, and of course in the most convenient and comfortable way possible, right? So how is it moving? Well, this time 4 weeks ago, we were at 3.45 months. So we are a little slightly higher than that right now, not massively, but slightly. Now at the top of the year, we were at 2.85 months. So the absorption rate is moving a little more away from sellers and a little more towards buyers as 2026 gets going. Now, where were we this time last year? Well, this time last year, we were in the same ballpark. We were at 3.22 months of an absorption rate this time last year. And again, today we're sitting at 3.88 months. So again, this is simply a measurement of supply versus demand. So today we are technically still in a seller's market, but let's watch that absorption rate as we head into the spring housing market. That's why you're going to want to follow along with me. I'm going to always keep you up to date in real time so that we know just exactly what the trend and the strategy and the pro tips are going to be to help you get your real estate needs and your real estate goals accomplished in the spring market of 2026. Well, I promised you 5 metrics that we were going to look at today with our Greater Louisville Housing Monthly update here. And here we are on point number 5. So you probably know, if you've been following along with me for a while now here on our YouTube channel, you know that the 5th thing that we're going to talk about is the interest rate. The interest rate is an important thing to look at when we're looking at the behavior in the housing market, because the interest rate is the measurement of how much it costs buyers to borrow money. And then therefore it influences the affordability of the buyer. Well, the affordability of the buyer influences the price points that the sellers can sell their properties for, and it also influences the demand from the buyer. Affordability is key when buyers are making decisions, and the more decisions buyers make, the greater impact that has on the seller. So the interest rate is an important factor to look at for both buyer and seller. Now, it seems that this month's monthly market update is full of asterisks, so I'm going to add another asterisk right here. Before we dive into the details of what that interest rate looks like currently, it's important to remember what the national average mortgage rate is for our country when we look at the 50-year average, right? So when we fly up 30,000 feet above everything and we look at the 50-year history of our country and its mortgage rate, the average mortgage rate is right at 7.1%. That's the average mortgage rate for the United States for the past 50 years. So anytime that the rate is trending under that 7.1 number, awesome news. It's below average for the 50-year trend. So keep that in mind as we dive into this for perspective, right? So today, these interest rates, you all, looking really good. So today, the average 30-year mortgage rate is just like a breath over 6%. We're at 6.04% for a 30-year. Now, a 15-year today is at 5.61%. Now, let's compare that to where we were just 4 weeks ago. So again, we're always wanting, when we're looking at these trends, we're wanting to say, what direction are we moving in, right? So 4 weeks ago, we were a little north of that. We were at 6.21% for the 30-year and 5.75% for the 15-year. So we're moving in a good direction, right? Now, at the start of the year, we basically were exactly where we were just a month ago. We were at 6.2% when we started 2026, and we were at for 30-year, and we were at 5.74% for the 15. So since the top of 26 to where we are now, which is wrapping up February and going into March, the interest rate is coming down slightly, which anytime the interest rate comes down, it is in the favor of the buyer. Affordability is better for the buyer, and then oftentimes becomes also in the favor of the seller because demand, the more affordable housing is, usually we see a greater impact on demand, and demand goes up from the buyer, which puts the seller in a great position. So how does that all compare to this time last year? So we know that today, we know that the inventory is up from this time last year. We know that currently right now, the average sales price is a little lower than this time last year. We know that days on market are roughly about the same, and we know that the absorption rate is right now higher than it was this time last year. So what about the interest rate? Where's that going as we compare it year over year? Well, great news. This time last year, we were almost a whole point higher than where we are today. So this time last year, we were at 7.02% for the average mortgage rate for the 30-year, and for the 15-year, we were at 6.46%. So again, that's some great news, y'all. Let's compare and contrast. This time last year in 2025, that 30-year rate was at 7.02, and today that 2026 year, that 30-year rate is at 6.04. This is great news for everyone. You guys, it is shaping up to be a really steady, awesome, full of opportunity spring housing market here in Louisville, Kentucky. So for most of us, the property that we own is one of our largest assets, which makes it so important that you always have the most accurate, trusted information available to you in terms of how the market is behaving, because that impacts your equity always, even if you're not looking to buy or sell anytime in the near future. Now, especially for people who are thinking about making a move or have decided they're going to, or anticipating a life event later this year that might then require a move, it becomes massively important to have a professional in the real estate industry that you can trust for accuracy and strategy to help you get what you want, when you want it, in the most comfortable, convenient, and low stress method possible. So that is exactly why we here at the Price Group at Keller Williams Collective are committed to one of the many things that we do to service our community, being to deliver to you monthly market updates that are specific, that are clear, and you can trust us for them to be accurate. I'm Emily Price with the Price Group at Keller Williams Collective. If you are a property owner in the Greater Louisville area, and or you are thinking about moving to our area in the future, and or you're anticipating possibly a life change later this year that could require a move, or you've just decided that you want to make a move, I need you to do one thing, and that is to hit the subscribe button right here so that you don't miss any of the trusted, valuable information that we take great care to prepare for you at all times, especially our monthly market update. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button right there so that you don't miss a beat, because knowledge is power, and our goal for our clients and community is to be very knowledgeable so you can be very powerful and confident in your decisions. And if you're ready to reach out to me and talk to me directly, you can call the Price Group and reach myself, Emily Price, or any member of our team at 502-554-9749. We are excited to talk with you soon, be a great resource for you, and answer any questions you might have. I'm Emily Price with the Price Group at Keller Williams Collective, and this is your February 2026 Greater Louisville Housing Market Update.